let's start?
Yes.
Let's start.
Okay, so first, thank you very much, Tami and Rami. It's an honor, a pleasure to have this talk with you guys. As I told you guys before, I'm very honored to be your friend, and you guys embody what's Israel. Your family was involved since the afterwards. The war, the building of the nation, to building the proud of the nation, and then you have Rami's story, which is an amazing story. So I will try to cover that. So I will start asking about Peter Malkin's story. So let's start for that. So maybe tell me, can you tell me where he was born? Are you sure where he was born?
It always was a big question, because once he said he was born in Poland, and once he said he was born in Israel, and because he had, I think, many passports and ID cards, we never really know till today if he was born here or in Poland. We think he was born in Poland, but we cannot be sure.
And do you know how he turned to be a secret agent? What's the story behind that?
Yes. When he was 12 years old, he participated in the Haganah. It was like the beginning of the army, Mossad, army.
No, but just before the army was even created, there was a guerrilla movement called Haganah, and he was, as a kid, he was in Haifa, and the Arabs at that time were doing all kind of violent acts against Jewish people, so he
participated in the Haganah.
So he decided to join the Haganah and strike back as a kid.
And then after, when he was in the army, actually, he was
He was an explosive expert.
This is what he actually did. Afterwards, after the army, he joined the Shabak.
The Shabak.
The Shabak.
The Shabak is the comparable to the FBI. Okay, it's like the...
Yes. And then he was actually the first, he created the operational in the operational office in the Mossad. So he actually was the first one to created it. And you know, the Mossad then was very, very small. It's not like today that there are many people. So I think in the operational department, there was like very few people, and he was the one who
initiated it, and then he became the head of it. Yeah.
Yes.
So before going deeper on Mossad, so can you guys, let's talk about the Eichmann mission. I know Eichmann. I know he was a painter, and the painting was part of his disguise, yeah, for international travel. So was he a real painter? Was he talent painting?
I think, as I understood, and as a kid, he was always painting. When he was in the house, not much. He was mostly out of the house, and we never knew where he is. But when he was in the house, when we were kids, he always painted. So he really loved to paint. And I think he was very talented, and he just used it as a cover, as a cover for all other things that he did in the Mossad. But it's not that he created he learned painting for using it. He just took it with him to what he did in the world, in the operations and stuff. And I remember every time when he had a roof in the house, and
a gallery.
A gallery. When there he was painting, and we will always came to the gallery, and he was asking us about the paintings, how it is, and what we think we see there, and the colors. And he was very into his painting. He really, really loved to paint, and I think it also was for his mentality. One painting is here. Can you see?
Beautiful. It was stunning. It was stunning.
It was very, very good in colors. And I think this is maybe was the way for him to run away from everything, because to relax, to go deep inside himself, not thinking about anything, and really, he was an artist. So.
And he added to his paintings also a language. In some of the paintings, he was writing things that are related to people, to being positive, to do things that are important. He was a philosopher and a painter together.
When he actually captured Eichmann, he took the guide, the tourist guide. We still have it. My brother has it in the US. He lives there. It's a very small guide, like the red guide, Michelin guide. It's small but very thick book. And he actually painted in the book. He always said that if he has like a background under the painting, then he associates and he can paint. It's like he had to paint. This is the beginning. If he has something under, and when they were in Argentina, they were 3 weeks before they captured actually Eichmann. Then he started painting, and I think it helped him thinking, imagine, planning, and
the painting that he withdrew on that guide, the Argentina guide, were related to his history, related to his sister that was murdered in the Holocaust, his mother, his family, the house in the Garibaldi, he painted it as well, and a lot of language related to it.
So how much did Eichmann mission? So how much do you know about the Eichmann mission? His part on that. I know he was the one who physically captured him, but what was his role on that, and how much this affect his life? So how much he thought about this after, because it was so important. I think it was the most important point in his career. Yeah. So can you tell me about that?
It depends in how you look at it, because if it's like for the operation, if it wasn't the most complicated operation, as he always said, was the easiest one. I don't know if it's true, but this is true. We a lot of the things we don't know till today what he really did. I know that he did very, very crazy other operations, and this one I think was historical and very, very important for the Jewish people, because to bring Eichmann to Israel and it was like a, wow. איך אומרים? אבן דרך.
It was a milestone.
A milestone, yes. What I know, I actually...
He also interrogated him after he captured him. הוא חקר את אייכמן.
Okay. The most, I think what is interesting about the capture of Eichmann for my father was to be with him 3 weeks after he was captured. They were together in the same house, and what they wanted to do is to convince him to sign that he accept coming to Israel for the court, to be in court, to the trial. And they want to do it legally, not like taking him and hiding him in the airplane and just do it illegally. And it was very hard to convince him to do it, because why Eichmann, what a chance he has to come to Israel and explaining why he did what he did. So, and after all of them, there were like 6 people there in the group. After all of them trying in different kind of ways, my father in his very romantic, not romantic, but artist kind of style, he stuck with him, and he's always saying, how could you give him a glass of wine? He's a monster. Why? How could you be nice to him? But he said, my father, I don't know, he's a human being, and we talk, and we need to do it. So I did it. I just did it. I did what I had to do.
He also said that it was very, it struck him, because they were looking for Eichmann the monster. And when they were, searching for him and following him, he suddenly saw that he is treating his small son, as a father will treat his son. And, it struck him that, it's a human being. And one of the bottom lines of Zvika is saying, human beings can become monsters, and human being can create something that devastating. We cannot say, it's only monsters. No, it's human beings that can, go as low as the Nazis did. And when he spoke with him and when he tried to convince him to come to Israel, he was talking with him as a person, as an individual, and he was telling him about his family, Zvika's family that died in the Holocaust. And he asked him, how could you do it? He asked Eichmann, how could you do it? And he said, I'm following orders. It was obvious to Eichmann that this is the answer. I'm following orders.
And also, one of the things about his kid, it's interesting that he saw when they were looking for Eichmann and they were not sure if it's him for sure, 100%, my father saw once that he was looking at through the window, seeing a train with his kid. His kid was young, 3 years old, something like this, with his kid watching the train going along. So my father asked him, do you know that when you stand like this with your kid and showing him this train that your kid's supposed to like, it's like a toy. My family, they were in these trains, and you took them. You were the one who decide to take these Jewish people to die. So what is the difference between my kids or my sister and other kids than your kid? Why? What? So what he answered was exactly what he said. It was, first he said, he was a Jew. They were Jewish, no? So, and the second thing, this was my order to do it. So.
Yeah, I can imagine how difficult it was for him to talk to this guy and do what he has to do professionally. It was really difficult, I imagine.
When he captured him, one of the things about the gloves, he didn't take, my father was afraid that his hands will touch his mouth. He couldn't think about it. This was for him, so,
because he had to put his hand on his mouth.
So he won't shout.
Mm-hmm.
So he has his gloves, and these gloves is a monument now. They did like a bronze statue from these gloves, and there are few of them in the Jewish Museum in New York, and also here in Beth-El. So
tell him about his mother.
Okay. This is a very. I think my father, the hardest thing for him is that actually he was alive and his sister was dead with her kids. I think he never said that, but I think he felt like how I didn't how I didn't save her. How could it be that I'm alive and we couldn't save her? And this, I think, drives him very hard to do something in the Mossad for, and when after he captured Eichmann, nobody knew, of course, for many years. I don't know exactly how many years since it happened and was out. And his mother felt bad, and she was dying. And they asked him, I don't know, I think my mother called my father and asked him to come back to Israel because his mother doesn't feel good. And he came to the hospital, and he said, I must tell her that I was the one who captured Eichmann. And he came to the room, to her bed, and there was a woman. Mother, she doesn't hear. She's deaf, and
she's dying.
She's dying. She cannot hear anything. She don't bother. And he said, Ima, I must tell you something. I'm the one who captured Eichmann. And she was like with her eyes, almost. She said, I knew you won't forget your sister. And then after a while, she was dead. So I think it's very.
Very touching.
Yeah. He couldn't let her go when she doesn't know that he did it again.
I would like to ask you. I know how important was him building Mossad. So. Especially the story you guys told me about the parking lot. So can you tell me how was the building of Mossad and some stories about ideas he had and implement on the espionage way of proceeding?
Okay, so I will tell you that because he told me those stories and I was, sucking those stories out of him. So in the beginning, he was in Shabak. Before he was in Mossad, and the Shabak is the like counter-espionage force in Israel. They were supposed to, protect Israel from spies. And at that time, there was Russian spies that were in Israel, and they were operated by the Russian embassy. And the Shabak knew that they are meeting them, and those were people that came out of Russia, like as engineers, as professors, in universities, in other things, working in the defense industry in Israel, and they could not capture them. They were following them in circles, and they never had opportunity to capture them. And when Zvika came and they gave him that mission, he came to the headquarters of Shabak, and what he saw is a huge parking lot with hundreds of cars. Every morning, the agents would get into the car and would start driving and looking for spies. And he said, listen, it's written all over the car that you are spies. You know, the Russians know all the numbers, all the ID numbers of the cars, you know. Who are you trying to fool? Tomorrow, I want all those cars to be gone. To be gone. If you want to take a car, then you rent a car and you use it for a day, and then you return it and you rent another. And we are following them, and they know that we are following them. Bernardo, you're busy.
Yes, I listening. Yes.
So we are following them, and they know that we are following them because they're walking, and we're walking after, you know, behind them, 200 meters. It doesn't matter. They know. So he said, this methodology of following suspects need to be changed dramatically. And then he invented what he called the comb, you know, to comb your hair, the comb tactic. And the comb tactic says, nobody follows anyone. Nobody moves. You take a certain quarter of the city that you know that activity is supposed to happen there. And we put people in places that will cover this spot, this huge area, and they will report one to the other, you know, suspect X is going to your direction. And then the other will say, yeah, I see him. Okay, now I look at him. And then when he move on, he will talk to another agent. So those suspects were still looking backwards to see if someone is following them. Nobody followed them because people were ahead of them all the time. And then he started capturing one spy after the other. So in a matter of like, I don't know, a couple of months, he captured like 3 mega spies in Israel. Israel Bear was like the most senior scientist in Israel that was part of the most secretive defense technology development in Israel. And he ended up being a spy, and Zvika captured him. So that was when he was in Shabak. When he was in Mossad, he was in the department that was supposed to get into embassies and all kinds of places that he was not supposed to be there, and to get information, get in and get out without anyone knowing. And he was a master in breaking locks, but not breaking them with a hammer. He would get into a place, like even once with Tammy's mother in an embassy in Paris, and they were getting into something like kind of a reception, and he was getting next to a certain door, and with something like plasterline, you know, something soft, he would take a copy of the lock in order to understand which lock it is. And then he would send agents to Spain, I think, or to Portugal to find this lock. Okay, an identical lock. To find it in order to learn how to break it in seconds. Okay, it's not that you have a master key like you see in the movies. No, there was a preparation, a whole preparation, pre-operation. And he said there was one place where there were 5 locks on the door. And he needed to open those locks in 3 minutes. He had to grab all those locks from all over the world to reverse engineer them in order to come in and open them one by one and then close them one by one, nobody sees. This is one. The second thing was when he was inside, this embassy or a place that he was not supposed to be in, there were times where someone was coming. Now, they didn't have phones. And they couldn't talk with make noises and stuff like that. Then it was, I don't know, back in the 60s. So he asked for the technology team in Mossad to create for him the prototype of what is later known to be the beeper. Okay, so when he was in, he had this machine, this equipment, that if someone from outside saw that someone is coming, they could beep him in order to make him aware. And for that, they got, the prize or a medal like for the Israel defense, like the highest prize for the Israel defense, because of that type of innovation. He was, more than everything, Zvika was a thinker. And what he said every time, and then he kept saying it also to kids, your brain is your weapon. It's your brain. Use it. And that's what he did. He was using it all the time.
Tell me when you first get pregnant, the story about the name of your son. That's a funny story, please.
It was actually my second pregnancy. The first one was the dove, and then after a year and a half, Michaela and Eli were born. They're twins. They're now 20 years old. And when we discovered that we have twins, and we knew that it's a boy and a girl, after I saw Eli, I said to Rami, I don't know. It's because it's complicated a little bit to find names for two, because it has to sound, you have to match it to the baby and also how it sounds together. So I said, I want Eli. That's the name I want.
And Tommy was never obsessive about anything. And she was not trying to force anything. We are always talking. But here she came and she said, the boy's name is going to be Eli. And I said, okay.
And Rami said, let's think, because maybe I want to call Michaela, maybe Elia. Okay, now she's Michaela. And I said, no, it can't be Eli and Elia together. It doesn't sound good. We have to think about it. So let's think about Eli, maybe different name. I said, no, he must be Eli. And Eli in Hebrew, you can write it with Aleph or with Ain. There are a lot of Eli with Ain. I was sure that my Eli will be with Aleph. Okay? And we called him Eli. And Michaela, we called Michaela, not Elia. And after my father heard that, he said...
Just a second before this. Don't go into the story. We also wanted to give him another name. Another name. So because the big one got my father's name, Nadav Asher, Tommy was saying, I'm calling him Eli Peter. Peter after my father.
Because Peter was his name abroad, outside of Israel.
Abroad.
Okay.
So
after we called Eli, Peter, my father came and said,
then Tommy came to her father and said, Daddy, we called our kids under your name, Peter. Eli Peter. And he said,
you don't believe what I hear now, he said. I said, what? He said, that was the name that I always had in every operation out there. That was my secret name.
So Tommy was referring to Peter and he was referring to Eli.
I said, what? And I didn't know that. It was his secret name. I said, no, can't be. He said, that was my name. He was in shock, my father. He was in shock. And also exactly the way I spelled it was the way he spelled it. Because you can spell it in different ways.
So your father was the first chapter of your family building Israel. And now let's talk about Rami. What's the second chapter? So I know everyone goes to the army, so I will not ask you how you get to the army, but can you tell me about the missions and how you got injury?
Yeah, so I was a tennis player before the army, a good one. But when I reached 18, I said, I'm not going to be like you can be a professional sportsman, and then you can go to the army to something more relaxed. And I said, no, I'm going to the best unit I can. And I decided to go to the paratroopers because the paratroopers to me sounded like the most extreme thing. And it was a very difficult basic training of 17 months. And then I became a commander. And then I went to the officers course and became an officer and got my platoon. Before I got my platoon, when I was in the officers course, then Lebanon war started. And we were in Lebanon. I was in Lebanon as a cadet in the officers course of special units and infantry. And we fought in the east side. It was where the Syrian were, and we were fighting with them. And I didn't get injured then. And then I returned back to Israel. I got my platoon. And I returned to Lebanon as a platoon commander in the paratroopers. And then one day we got information that there is a group of terrorists that are coming from the north in a certain wadi, in certain, how do you say, coming from the mountains, and we got the orders to go and to check out the area and to identify those terrorists. And a friend of mine was the guy that was supposed to lead this operation, and I was selected to be the rescue team. So the immediate intervention team. If something happens, then I will get in with my team and to help them. And they were searching a certain mountain. It was winter when it was muddy and raining, and they saw a suspicious house out of nowhere. There was a small house there, and they decided to check in what's going on there. And while they approached the house, they thought that they got intercepted by the terrorists, because the platoon commander, my friend, and his soldier suddenly they fell injured because of 2 explosions. And everybody started shooting at the house because we're sure that there is a collision now with the terrorists. And 2 other soldiers from the same team rushed into this area in order to help the platoon commander and the soldier. And when they reached there, another one fell injured because of another explosive. And then they understood that they are actually in the middle of a very deadly, wild minefield. Okay, it's a minefield that was not in the maps. It's wild because it's not something that you usually see. Every 3 meters you have a line of mines or something like that. It was like Sdom VaAmorah, okay? And they said, stop, nobody moves. And then they called the intervention team, which is me. And I rushed in and I saw my friend and these 2 soldiers lying on the ground without their legs, legs already taken off because of the explosive. And I need to get in and take them out. And we didn't have equipment at that time to get into minefields. It was in north of Lebanon. Immediately after the war, a lot of the equipment was damaged. And we had to get in almost barefoot, like with a knife that is searching the ground for mines. One after the other, we were 2. My commander was the first one. In Israel, commanders always go first. So my commander was the first one. I was the second one. And we were getting into the minefield with a stretcher in order to take them out. And we got into a wall that we need to climb down. We were in a higher ground. You need to go down in a terrace, just like this one, and then get to them. And my commander stepped down first in the terrace. And then I asked him, Sharon, where in the terrace did you step? Where did you put your leg? And he told me, I put my leg on this stone. So I'm slowly leaning forward. It's like a big going down with the leg in order to step on the stone, and a split of a second before I hit the stone, I realized that I'm going to hit a mine. I knew it. And the reason I knew it is because the sides of the stones were covered with dry mud. It was a very narrow stone, so it was hard to see it. But dry mud means that this stone was in the ground for hundreds of years, getting mud all the time, and someone took it out and put a mine underneath, and I'm going to hit it in a split of a second. So I wasn't surprised. Well, it was too late to go back. Yeah, I was all of me already on the stone. And I hit the mine, and explosion. I fall really far away into the minefield. I look at myself. A second before I was a lieutenant in the special forces, and now I'm something completely different. My foot is gone. My two hands are very, very badly injured. And well, as you see, I don't have my right arm, and my left arm is very badly injured, but in the minefield, this arm was still attached to me. Still, the arm itself was still attached to me. And while understanding that lives are going to change forever, okay, those are the big thoughts. Life are going to change forever. The immediate thoughts on top of that was, I need to check what I can do with this arm. And I took this arm with my hand and I put it on my body, and I checked and I see that the fingers still work, meaning it can be saved. But it was like really north of Lebanon. And until the helicopters came, and until they took me out of the minefield, and until they returned me to hospital, I already fainted, because I said, I need to stay, to stay conscious in order to tell the doctor not to cut my hand. That was my thinking when I'm lying down on the field in the minefield. But I lost my conscience, and I woke up only after the operation. And then I asked them, what am I missing? And they said, your arm and your foot. And that was really, it was the second event in the same day. For me, it was two separate events that in each one of them, I missed another part of the body. So that was the injury itself. And one lesson that I learned from that event, and I keep saying it to soldiers, I keep saying it to entrepreneurs, the terrain is speaking. The terrain is saying something all the time. Now, terrain is not only a minefield. Terrain is your business plan. The terrain is investors. The terrain is what the market is telling you. Every movement that you do in your life, there is a reaction, and you need to read it. You need to be very sensitive in reading what the market is telling you. Just like I missed the dry mud. I missed the dry mud. The terrain was talking to me, but I missed it. And I paid dearly. You, every step in the way along your life, listen to the terrain. Listen to the terrain. So that was, rule number one. And then I'm in the hospital for like 10 months. But in the first 3 weeks, it was very tough. Very, very tough. Because I couldn't move a finger in my body. I was covered with, casts and bandages, and all my body was covered. I couldn't even touch my ear. And I said, what's going on? Am I going to stay like that for the rest of your life? 2 hands, 2 legs. And it was understanding that maybe it's not worth staying there. Maybe I should do reset and start all over again, you know, in another life. And 3 weeks after the injury, I dreamed a dream. I call it an LSD dream. LSD not because of the morphine that I was getting every 2 hours. LSD because it's life-saving dream, LSD. And in this dream, I see myself standing just like one of the toys behind you, standing, how do you say, perfect. Not missing anything. Not a leg, not a hand, perfect. A kind of a dream that if you wake up from, you want to die, okay? But there was 2 things in this dream that made it a life-saving dream. In the dream, I saw myself perfect except of 2 things. My right hand was painted in black, and my left leg was painted in black. But I was with 2 hands and 2 legs and perfect. So I woke up, like in bed, can't move an inch, and telling to myself, so it's only a color. I can live with that because it's only a color. And from that moment on, I had a new dream to achieve what I dreamed in this dream, to become perfect, only with a different color. So you see my leg, my hand is black, also my leg, I like the color.
You know, I think I told you, I consider you one of the best investors in the world. Now I understand why you became that. Amazing. So then you, after this dream, you became a savvy investor. So how did you enter this investment life? How was that for you?
Mm-hmm.
I know you started in US, but how everything started for you?
Mm-hmm. So it's funny because it's related to the first part of this interview. Mm-hmm. My dream was to go to the Mossad after the army. That was my dream. And when I got injured, while in the minefield, I said, this dream is over. No Mossad. You cannot. But the reason I wanted to go to Mossad, if we try to, line down the reasons for that, of course, it's for the country, but also it's excitement. It's doing interesting things. It's working on multiple fronts. And then when I didn't have it, and I had to compromise on just doing business, I said, okay, Rami, what is in business? What is something that is, looking into the future, into the horizon? What is exciting? What is risky? What can you do in multiple fronts? And then I said, this is, bottom line, this is venture capital. Because in venture capital, you are doing multiple things. You are taking risk, you're taking responsibility. You're required to think outside of the box. And that's actually what led me to this business, because it was the closest thing that I could find in business to being a Mossad agent.
And you did it. You did it. You were amazing. I learned a lot with you. I can tell you. And I know you do a very important job with the soldiers. So can you comment on that? What's your with the army still?
So I decided that I got injured too quickly. Okay, I felt that I didn't do enough in the army. I was only 4 years and my injury stopped me from doing other stuff. So it was in my vein to return to the army in the reserve duty. Okay, so after I got, rehabilitated and started my university, I returned to the army as an officer in the reserve. It's an operational position. Okay, so it's in the field. And I swore to myself that I'm not going to quit that until my kids are going to be released from the army. This is one. So I'm still on reserve duty in a very operational position, jeeps and helicopters and you name it. At the same time, in parallel, I am being asked again and again to talk with soldiers and officers and tell them the story and tell them my conclusions for life. Okay, and I see it as a mission to talk with people, but it's the same thing as entrepreneurs, but also from like officers and soldiers in the army, and making them understand that, as I said, listen to the terrain, because it will take a split of a second, one day, but everything will be changed on you because you were not careful enough. This is one thing. And the second thing, rely on your intuition. While moving in the terrain, in life, you build intuition. And intuition is a summary of all your experiences in a sensor that you have in your head, that when you have to make a quick decision, intuition will tell you A or B. And maybe rationally it's B, but if your intuition told you A, think about it one more time before you make a decision. And multiple other lessons that I learned from the army, from my injury, and later as an investor. So those are two things that I do in parallel in life. You asked before whether our kids has a weight on their shoulders because of Tammy's father and myself. So the first thing that it's important to state that because I got injured severely, my kids, our kids, are exempt from going to combat units. Okay, because in Israel, if you have a high profile, you need to go to a combat unit. But if your father died or got injured badly, you are exempt from that. You don't have to go to a combat unit. And our kids came to us and said, you need to sign on a waiver because they are not allowed to go to a combat unit unless we sign a waiver. So for both for Nadav and Eli, we had to go to the army, and they had to tell us that we need to understand the consequences, that if they are in battle, we cannot withdraw from the waiver. Once you sign the waiver, that's it. And we understood that the kids want to go to combat unit, and we signed a waiver because this is what they wanted. And we told our kids, you know, go to wherever you want. You don't need to go to the paratroopers or to any other special unit. But I don't know, I guess not coincidence, they both got to the same unit as I was. And for them, it was very, very important. Very important to be with a red beret.
So you prepare them with the training field you have in your house. So
yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, how did kite surfing start in your life? It started in Brazil, so I know you come to Brazil for kite surfing. And how do you have to adapt for that?
So when I decided that I'm going to be like in the dream, you know, and I realized also that I am now in a competition. I'm competing with who? With Rami that didn't get injured. Like, what if I wasn't injured? Where would I be? This is who I compete with. Okay, so, and it's physical, of course. Physical, the competition in like physical shape. And I started doing a lot of sport, and it started with running, and then it's mountain climbing, and then it's riding on a bike in Africa, and you name it. And suddenly I saw that I can do everything that I want, everything. And I started believing that there is nothing in my way. And then I saw kitesurf. And I said, piece of cake, I can do kitesurf. Big mistake. Like, you need 2 legs on the bar, on the board. You need 2 arms on the bar. And the board is touching water. The bar is touching wind. And what's in between me need to do the, you know, the, how do you say, the tivuch, the brokerage between this and that. And it was very difficult. It was extremely, almost impossible. And impossible because my arm needs to grab the bar and it cannot like release it. But at the same time, it needs to release the bar when it's dangerous. Okay, you need to be able to like take this kite and get rid of it. Otherwise, it will take you like a dragon that is holding you in his tail. And for months, I was losing my legs and my arms, my like prosthetic one, in the water because it didn't hold off, or it did hold off, but too aggressively. And then I was dragged after the kitesurf, and my leg fell, and again, my arm fell. But I didn't give up. I said, no way. I'm going to do it. And it started in Tel Aviv and then in Sinai, until one day I started kite surfing, and I was so excited And I was so used to get all kinds of hits that I continued in being very, very aggressive in my kite surf. And this is when I discovered Brazil and Jericho Aquara. And end of the story, also took my 2 kids to Jerry, and we kited there, and I plan to be there again next year, hopefully. I wanted to come this year, but Corona didn't help me.
Yeah, but I hope soon. I hope soon. Yeah. So to end our conversation, we have a lot to talk, but unfortunately we don't have much time. Tell me on your future plans, especially on the crypto fund you're building. Why you're so enthusiastic about the crypto?
So, every once in a while, there is something new coming to technology. And sometimes it's here and then it goes away, or the trend will change. It was optical networks back in 2000. Everybody was sure that optical networks is going to be the future of telecommunication. It's going to stay here, and then it was gone. There are multiple technologies that are here to stay, and others that are not of too much substance. Like cyber is here to stay. Okay, cloud is here to stay. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is here to stay. And Internet of Things, connection between things and things through the internet is here to stay. There are multiple vertical, technology segments that are important in order to build a disruptive product in certain verticals. Okay, so there are technologies, the one that I was telling you about, and then there are the verticals that everybody wants to approach. Food technology, agriculture technology, mobility, fintech, insurance tech, okay? This is the Y, and the X are the technologies. And then comes blockchain. Blockchain as a technology, not blockchain as a digital token. Blockchain as a technology created disruption because for the first time, you can create a next generation product in multiple verticals like food tech, agri-tech, mobility, smart cities, you name it, without the need for a central body. Banks are a central body. If you want to transfer money from me to you, someone will charge us for the fee. Okay, it's a central body, and they make billions because of that. Same goes with many other issues. Blockchain allows you to create an ecosystem of trust, of privacy, in a flat hierarchy. And I realized suddenly that this technology is not only a technology, it allows a change of mind similar to what the internet did in 2000. And that's why I decided that I want to invest in blockchain companies in Israel and Europe. And we are closing a fund of $40 million. We already invested in 6 companies that are in the fund, and those companies are skyrocketing. And when you look at the companies, if you look at one of the companies, you said, yes, they use blockchain technology, but it's actually an agri-tech company that is allowing farmers to get loans. So is it a blockchain company, or is it an agriculture company, or is it a fintech company? Okay, the blockchain part is only the enabling technology, just like machine learning. Machine learning is not a vertical by itself. Machine learning is an enabler. Okay, So the same thing with blockchain. It's an enabler to disrupt the most important verticals in our life. So this is one thing that I'm doing, but at the same time, I'm also investing in companies in other verticals, in other, across the board in terms of the verticals that are of interest to me.
Sure, you're gonna be very successful. You are the guy. Guys, I'm really honored. We could talk many hours here. I know you guys are also very occupied, so thank you very much for your generosity to spend this time with us, and I really hope to see you in person anytime soon in Israel or in Brazil. I was so happy to be here with you. Make my day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Big hug.
Thank you. Bye-bye.